Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of the CannaList Conversation. We are here today with Lauren Mundell of Hi Curious. Lauren, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, your background for our listeners and our viewers is that you are from the high power world of PR and now you're in cannabis. What the hell happened?
Well, the high power world of PR is always on the list of most stressful jobs in the world, as I'm sure you know. But PR was really in my blood. My father owned multiple agencies, and then I started there, and then uh, moved on to Ogilvy and Ketchum, where I worked on big brands like Pfizer and PepsiCo and helped Avocados from Mexico with their first few Super Bowl ads, and really did worked on Weight Watchers and
You didn't set Michael on fire, right? You didn't have anything to do with that one.
no, that was way before my time. But the Advil Bon Jovi ad, that was all me. So
Oh, good job. Good job.
For context. Yeah. And so what happened? Trump got elected. My husband retired.
We all did drugs when that happened.
Right. Well, not yet. But my husband retired from the Navy. And he was really interested in using cannabis again because he remembered how it always had a positive effect on him when he was a teenager. He lost his mom really young. So when he was retiring, he kept saying, I'm going to smoke weed. I'm going to smoke weed. And I was like, this, sitting at my desk, like, that will never happen. Just assuming that like, we're just going to live this same sort of corporate climbing the rung of the ladder to nowhere forever. I never really thought that there were other paths. And then he just got some cannabis from, a dealer in New York, like as you would do in New York in 2017.
Way back when, right?
Way back when. And he started using it. And I found him to be like much more enjoyable to spend time with when he was using it. And then I was like, that started. And then I was like, okay, I want to be more enjoyable. And I want to be, it seems like so light, but I was really scared of it because I had tried it in college and I had what I now know was an anxiety attack after having it. Or panic attack, I think even, more extreme. And I didn't realize that was something that was not necessarily just caused by cannabis. It was an uncorked like feeling of unaddressed issues that had happened obviously when I was young, because I hadn't ever had to deal with myself. And so I was afraid to use cannabis, so much so that I would take these tiny little hits. Like, I don't even know if I would get anything. I would look at the clock. I'd be like, it's 9:16. And then at like 9:42, I'd be like, okay. And the whole time in between, I'd be like, am I high? Am I high? How do I feel? So now I've learned that is called
microdosing. That's me on edibles, by the way, but thank you.
That is me. That is really what's called microdosing, right? It's like you're trying to find this place where you feel good, but you don't feel high.
Yeah.
And I really was finding that. And as a wellness marketer, I was like, why isn't anyone talking about cannabis as a wellness supplement? Why has this always been this drug, this recreational, analogous to alcohol, when really this is something that helps people with their mental health, their physical health and well-being? But I just really never had any sense of that because of how I was raised, super, say no to drugs and all of that. So I had no idea that this plant was a medicine until I really started using it like one, kind of almost by accident. And, now here I am 5 years later, a huge advocate for the plant, and I've made my life so much about the plant. But also, once I started using cannabis, it was like I couldn't unsee the corporate world that I was sort of trapped in. And I never knew I was trapped in it. I just thought that was the world, but I started to feel trapped. It was like I could see too much. And And so I had to find something that was more fulfilling to me than what I was doing at the time, which was, really supporting big business to do more big business. And, our budgets were in the millions, and we were working really, we weren't making change. We were just selling things.
Mm.
And so I got excited about cannabis and the opportunity to be in the beginning of a brand new, like, blank slate. And it's been a crazy, exciting, stressful ride.
So you left Madison Avenue. Where are you now?
I live right outside of Boulder, Colorado,
Mhm.
in a town called Lafayette. And I moved to Colorado in 2019, the summer of 2019, after leaving Ketchum in September of 2018. And I moved here because, well, I always wanted to move back here. I lived here when my first son was born 20 years ago. And I always loved how the climate here, and that was way before cannabis. But then when I started wanting to talk about cannabis on social media, the idea of breaking the law in New York
Mm.
to share what I was passionate about by either sharing, products that I had gotten in other states, which is totally illegal, or sharing, illegal or showing illegal cannabis, just felt like, I'm a mom. I consider myself an extremely law-abiding, stand-up citizen, and to start just like breaking the law when I grew up in the town where I was living and I knew all the cops there, it was like, it just seemed just way too privileged, and like I just felt like it was putting my family in a weird position. So then I moved to Colorado. It's amazing here. I could never live anywhere else. And I can never live anywhere that doesn't have a legal cannabis market now.
Mm.
And I love living in Colorado for many reasons, mostly because of just the energy here. It's so much about the outdoors. It's just the opposite of New York, really.
And then when did you write the book?
So I started writing the book in, I want to say September of 2019. So right after I moved out here.
Okay.
It's a really interesting story. This woman, Jen Jackalone, who is the co-author of the book, she started joining my Instagram lives, and she had been a colleague at Ketchum, and we were both no longer at the agency. And I had a real reputation at the agency for being like a tough bitch, and she saw me, especially in the in the department where she worked, and she saw me kind of going through this change. And she is an author, a screenwriter, and is aspiring to, continue to get her name out there. And she approached me and said, "Have you thought about writing a book?" I said, "Yeah, but like, how am I going to write all this down?" And so we spent 15 hours on the phone, and she framed me out. Basically, it was like a therapy session. She framed it all out for me. And then I was able to then go through the entire thing and pull my stories through and, really put it into my voice and my words. And we were finished by December of 2019. And then COVID happened, and I've been building the business, and really working on that. And I wasn't necessarily like ready to read the book again, because there's some very emotional parts of it that I actually needed to go to therapy in order to like decide what I wanted to put in the book and what I didn't want to put in the book. And so I was approached by someone on LinkedIn who was interested in publishing. And so we worked together to self-publish the book, and it just came out in October officially in paperback, as well as in on audiobook.
And so for our audience, what's the name of the book?
The book is called Hi Curious, and the subtitle is A Reforming Rat Racer's Journey to Wellness.
And can they find this on Amazon, or where can they find this?
Yeah, you can find it on Amazon. It costs $14.20 for the paperback, and also you can get the Kindle for $4.20, as well as listen to the Audible book. And I read it. So it's a way to really, and for me, it's so funny because I'm like, I don't care about book sales. I care about book reads.
Mm.
Like I'm really interested in other, I mean, maybe it's navel gazing, but for real, what I'm excited about is other people to say, "Oh my God, I really relate to your story." And that is what has happened so many times over the course of the past couple years. And that's what, like, I guess that's what really lights me up. And people use the word like influencer. It's like, this is what, gets me up every day. And like, if there's other people who can like, who read my story, who can see themselves in some of the stories, like how challenging cannabis can be when as it relates to your children, how hard it is to deal with it with your own parents, and what it means to incorporate this medicine that has a lot of stigma around it into your life, and what happens as a result of that. And as coming from someone who only started using cannabis as an adult, so I never had that like stigma of I made this decision. This was a grown up decision. This wasn't like something that, oh, I've been using weed since I was 20 and it just is a part of my life. Like it was never a part of my life. So if there's people who are, and I have, it helped me with my anxiety, with um, pain, with sleeping better, with bettering my relationships with family members. So, if I could be someone who was so, again, not like I wasn't anti the people who were doing it, but I was just like, that is not for me. And now I'm like, oh my God, I'm about this. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that happens.
Yeah, right.
So you talked a little bit about, how this impacts your family. So how old are your kids?
I have a 20-year-old and a 16-year-old
Okay.
boys.
And are you open with them about this?
Extremely. In fact, when we moved to Colorado, we have what we call the weed room. It's the front room when you first walk into our house.
Okay.
I have an e-nail dab rig set up in there. I have like my entire bong collection on the countertop of the bar that we've retrofitted, which was an alcohol bar, but now it's a cannabis bar. I mean, I figured I moved here to Colorado where cannabis is legal. And when I moved here, I was going to treat it as the same way as I would treat alcohol, because we don't even drink alcohol anymore. I just haven't found that I have any use for it ever since I started using cannabis. The interesting part of the story is that my now 20-year-old son actually tried cannabis before I did. He was 15. He was in high school, and he was at a party and he tried it and he really loved it. And he thought, wow, it made me feel like less anxious and all these things, but he never told me about that. He never, shared, because as kids will do. Really, after I discovered it, um, my we had some pens and things like that. And my son actually stole one of our pens and brought it to school and got kicked out of said school, which the story is actually the first story in the book. And that was really the watershed moment for our family to say, we're not necessarily going to do things like everyone else is doing them. And that's okay. And our different thing is going to be around how we treat cannabis. So actually, instead of, when my son was having so much anxiety after getting kicked out of the school for cannabis, he had shared with me that he was using the pen at night to like help him with his anxiety and help him fall asleep. So he was actually having, and this is how the book starts, he was having like an incredible panic attack about basically you're 15 and you think you've ruined your entire life, or he was 17 actually, you think you've ruined your entire life. And he was like so stressed and upset. And I was like, do you think that cannabis would help you feel better right now? And he was like, yeah. And like, it was this decision. Like, I talked to my husband about it. I was like, I'm letting him have some of the pen and see if he'll immediately, just as soon as he had one puff, just his body relaxed. He was able to talk to me. the tears came more easily. It was just like, it just proved this medicine and how it has so much power. And so we then spent pretty much the next year in New York. Before he was a senior in high school and I was, starting the business, and we learned about cannabis together. And Chase, my 16-year-old, he is not interested, probably, because when your parents are really into something, you're totally against it. Um, but we use cannabis. I use it, you know, all day. It's my medicine. It's all over the place. If Chase wanted to have it, he's 16. I started using it when he was 12. So it was easy for us. When he was 13, we started inviting him. If you're interested in kind of learning about this and what we're doing, you can join, like hang out with us, because we were excluding him. We were going somewhere to do something private and leaving him out. So that, we had to change that, so, and here in Colorado, I don't know, the first time he had a friend over, and it was a Saturday, and they were hanging out, and I usually go outside to smoke, and I was like, and the kid like walked by the door, and he definitely saw me. And I said, like, did that upset you, Chase? And he was like, no, it's legal here. Like, I go over to people's houses and their parents are drinking. What's the difference? So I think we're making progress.
And I know that your mother visited you. So did you clean up the bond room, or it was in full display?
Great question. My mom has been extremely open to me ever since I've been open with her, right? So the more I share myself, the more she understands. Also, my mom did use cannabis recreationally throughout like her adult life, so she was familiar with it, and it wasn't something that she was afraid of. She definitely did not understand the idea of using it as a part of your wellness and lifestyle. So I have made a decision that, like, I am me, and if you don't accept this, then and all the things that come with it. I'm 48 years old at this point. Like, you can't please everybody, right? And I don't know, I find myself as having the opportunity to break generational trauma, and the only way to do that is by like making actual change. So my parents come over. My mom and my stepdad were just here for 11 days. We did use cannabis together multiple times. My mom used it, like would have like a puff here and there. My stepfather loves it to have a hit of the joint. For them, it's a part of their relaxation. And it's a special occasion type of thing. So no, I try to educate as much as I can about everything that I'm doing and why. So I often share, the edibles that I'm using. Like I have, like low dose edibles, like this one from Pantry. And really showing them why this is important to me and why I don't use other things instead. Like they will easily have, like my stepfather loves to have a vodka, at night, and my mom loves to have a glass of wine. Well, I saw my mom drink almost a bottle of wine, and so it's all fluid, we're working on it. So yeah.
And how have, you've mentioned the business. So tell us about the business.
The business. So I built the brand Hi Curious, HI-Curious. The book is HIGH Curious. And the brand was created because that's what I am. I am Hi Curious. I'm curious about what else how we can expand our minds, how we can grow as humans. And I know that cannabis and probably other psychoactives are a huge key to that. And I'm very interested in the future of wellness. And so I started the Hi Curious brand to kind of think about it as like a Whole Foods of cannabis, right? We're making sure that we're working with the brands that are doing things in a more of a wellness way than a like an overconsumption way or a high THC way. We're trying to be about what makes people feel better. And I think all cannabis use is medicinal, whether you're using it you think you're using it recreationally or not. But our target demographic is people who are looking to live, a well lifestyle and incorporate cannabis into that in whatever way works for them. And so in 2019, I realized that social media was a terrible place for cannabis people because of, we were getting shut down. We were getting, it was impossible to be, get seen in the algorithm. And I realized as a marketer that spending all this time building a community on Instagram was a complete waste of my time and energy. So I started building the app to really have a place where I can like house my community. And then in 2019 was also VapeGate, if you remember, and all the apps that were cannabis focused got dumped from the app store. So I had to abandon the project. But in 2020, when the world was crazy, I knew that like I have to have a way to keep my community together because I knew I wasn't going to be able to see anybody in person. And I relaunched the app. We got it approved on the App Store, which was like a shock. And we were able to have a big live stream event on April 20th, 2020, and really kind of start to put our stake in the ground in terms of a virtual media platform that connects cannabis enthusiasts, advocates, and brands. So Hi Curious is many things, but it's an app that allows people to meet others as well as share the cannabis content that cannot be shared on regular social media, but not just like bong rips and, that kind of thing. More, how do regular people use cannabis as a part of their lives and how they function and where they use it and all the interesting things about cannabis that cannot be shown on platforms where censorship, we're constantly trying to work around the censors. So Hi Curious also is a subscription platform for people who want to monetize their cannabis content or if they want to be cannabis coaches, like help other people learn about cannabis, or if they're a yoga instructor and they want to and they use cannabis as a part of their yoga routine and they want to teach yoga in a virtual place and charge subscriptions for being a part of their community. That's what Hi Curious, that's how we monetize.
And how have you seen, with the more acceptance, there's always the good and the bad, right? So what we've seen is, big cannabis and big money come into the space, changing, the environment. So what's your take on big cannabis?
So interesting. I was having a conversation this morning with my partner, and he said, all we need to do is get one of these big, all we need to do is get one of these MSOs on the platform, let them to back us. We'll give up, 45% and whatever. And and I'm like, if I get in bed with one of those MSOs, I won't have my relationships with the industry anymore, because the industry or the community, right, is really separate from the industry. Like the industry is really like 10 people, 10 companies, right? The community are the people who are supporting everyone else. So I would much prefer to be in partnership with people like the Levers brothers from Beard Brothers Farms, have the guys from Happy Monkey, the kind of next level, not the MSOs, because as much as I know that that's the, ticket to paradise from a financial standpoint, the game is long, and cannabis legalization isn't coming in this administration, and it's going to
I
take a
think you
long
just made a lot of people unhappy, but okay, go ahead.
and a lot of people, sure. And I mean, if he gets reelected, which I don't think is going to happen, then I could see him doing it in his second term.
Mhm.
But he's not going to do it in his first term. We're halfway there already, practically. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just he hasn't. If he didn't pardon, he could have done so much pardoning, and he could do so much expungement, and he's not doing anything around. That's not important to him.
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress. Since it's not, since legalization is probably not happening in the next couple of years, and normalization is, we can already say, is going to take, we're not going to be seeing any kind of normalization in real ways until within the next like 9-10 years. The generations have to kind of wash out in order to be able, like the Gen Zers, who are much more accepting of everything, need to kind of replace the mindset of the boomers who've like are the pains in the asses about it. So
yeah, but I'm gonna challenge you on that one, because I think the boomers are getting old, or I don't think they are getting old, and I think the boomers are recognizing this as a pain tool.
I agree, but I think that those boomers that recognize it as a pain tool aren't going to become advocates for the plant. They're just going to use it for themselves. So their peers aren't going to hear it from them. And there's plenty of people like my dad who have, extremely dug in heels about cannabis and do not want to be changed.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because the landscape, it's moving, but it goes back and forth, and there's still a tremendous amount of concerns about the product, the reputation, things like that. So we're definitely not there yet. What's interesting is we're here in Europe, so we're watching Germany, which has come out and said adult use on a federal level, and we believe that, at least in Europe, that is going to definitely, start the ball rolling, because nobody's going to want to be, second or third. They're going to be second or third, but no one's going to want to be 10th. So, once Germany goes, then I think the dominoes will fall in Europe.
And I feel the exact same way about New York and the United States. So, like, New York is like they legalized it, which was great. And I think, kind of like I got my app approved, like on a technicality. I really think New York, I swear, I feel like New York got marijuana approved on technicality, because Cuomo was so interested in covering up his sex scandal at the time that he was like, maybe if
anything, right?
Yeah, like maybe if we just like pass this bill for marijuana, everyone will forget that like I'm disgusting. And it did work for a little while. I mean, ultimately he, still got called on the carpet, but he so anyway, what the problem is, they did it so fast, and now they're not fast, slow, but fast in terms of figuring out
the legislation was fast.
Gonna be. Yeah. Right. So like now you can smoke weed in New York, but you can't buy weed in New York, so I think when New York gets its act together, in the next, let's just say 3 to 5 years, because everything like consumption in New York is going to be a game changer, and even more than Vegas, I think. So because it's so normalizing, like, and everyone goes to New York, and like I've heard when you walk down the street in New York now, you smell weed everywhere, because there's no rule about, you can smoke weed anywhere you can smoke cigarettes in New York. So you can literally smoke weed in the park. It's legal. So it's such a weird, but anyway.
But there's such a conundrum, because as you said, you can have it, you can smoke it, but they can't sell it, which is like, how does that work?
I don't know if you read the article, I think it was in the New York Times, about Washington Square Park, and how, Washington Square Park has always been a haven for drug selling. But now, because it's legal, drug dealers are setting up tables and, setting their products out, and things say like, and
The
they
farmer's
have,
market.
it's a farmer's market.
Exactly. And how cool is that? That's it, I mean,
It's entrepreneurship at its finest. And I think that's why I love this industry so much, is because,
but what would
and
you
that's,
rather have? Would you rather have a farmer's market that you can walk through, feel comfortable, feel safe, or have the black market where there's an element, right? So that's probably the best thing that's happened to that square ever, right?
right, because you can buy it, and you can buy weed there in the broad daylight rather than having to wait until 10
Right. You
o'clock
don't
at
have to go
night,
there
when you're
after
probably
dark.
also going to get mugged.
Right.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. So it's definitely, it's coming. It's all coming, and that's something that I have to tell myself all the time. Being an entrepreneur in this space is like, A, it's coming, and B, you're not behind. That's like my best advice for entrepreneurs in the cannabis space, is like, if you're in today, you're ahead. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 3 freaking years ago, I can't even believe it, when I decided to get into this, I was like racing already, but I didn't realize there was like not a lot of people to race with. It was more like run with everyone. And now I'm learning. That was like probably my biggest learning, is I'm ahead already. Just leaving corporate America for cannabis 3 years ago has set me up to be connected with, in the industry, and really well networked. And all I need to do, and sometimes I spend too much energy competing and less time and collaborating. And in 2022, we're going to be doing a huge push of collaboration. We're working with 20 partners, from podcasters, brands, and influencers, to really push to grow all of our social platforms, as well as grow High Curious, a social media platform, in order to drive awareness together, with 420, being the goal of what does 12 weeks of growth look like. So to me, it's all about collaborating in 2022. It's about finding strategic partners that really work for my business. And like, it's really sexy to think about, I could probably bring a celebrity on and I could grow really fast, or I could partner with an MSO and like sell out, but like, I want more than that. I want to enable the industry, and that's really what High Curious does. High Curious enables the industry to sell subscriptions to content, and be able to share actual cannabis content, education, how-tos, and connect directly with your consumer in meaningful ways, which you cannot do anywhere else online. But in the meantime, I have a very small number of people who have subscribed to my platform. So the most important thing that I can do is grow with others, and and together we can build what the future of cannabis should look like, which is truly based off of community. And I said earlier about kind of this, I would say, this struggle between corporate and community, and that there's the industry and then there's the people of the industry. And when we bring that together is when it's really going to take off, because what we're trying to do is not sell cannabis to people who already use cannabis. We're trying to create new cannabis consumers through learning how to use cannabis as a part of your lifestyle, not using cannabis only as a replacement for alcohol, which I think, has been a big proxy, especially for the mainstream.
Sure.
And I want to change that.
Sure. I mean, one of the other things that we look at and that we think is tremendously important also is, unfortunately, cannabis is probably one of the most unsustainable environments for growing, right? And it doesn't need to be, it just is, right? Because it's, you get better grows if you grow it indoors, but, look at the energy use that's being, and then, ideally, we don't want to see big cannabis come in with pesticides and all other kinds of products. We would like to support an organic product. And we think that's where you have to go back to the communities, because the communities are going to, we've called it the craft beer model, whatever you want to call it. But, if you care about the plant and you care about wellness, then you want a plant that's grown in a sustainable environment, right? That's not detrimental to the environment, and that, isn't grown, for the maximum profit via pesticides, chemicals, and things like that. You want an organic product.
Yeah, I agree. And I have found that organic product here in Colorado, and I know that it's possible to find it in most states, whether it's legal or not. There are people who are doing outdoor cannabis, and that outdoor cannabis, thinking about like let's think about like the bee population or honey, right? People say you should have honey, the propylene of your local community's bees, because those bees are actually helping your histamine blockers because they're pollinating everything that's around. And so if you're allergic to something and you have that in you, similar to, I'm not a doctor, but similar to, a vaccine. So you're inoculating yourself.
Oh, great.
against
You just pissed off another
Similarly-
bunch of people. Good job.
So, so with cannabis, if you're using it and it's grown in your local soil, then similarly you're getting the properties of your local environment, not just the soil, but your sunshine and your rain and your so I buy my cannabis at a grow and a dispensary called Shop the Republic. The company is called The Republic. And it's also they have a 2,000 plant outdoor grow here in Colorado, which is extremely hard to get a license for. And that's the challenge that you talked about at the beginning of this conversation, is growing outdoors in a mass scale in places is so challenging for so many reasons. But the first one is the law. Because mostly the reason why you see these grows inside is because they're forced inside. It's not that they only want to grow better inside, because it's much more cost effective to grow outside, especially if you have a good climate, which so many places in the United States have a perfect growing climate for cannabis in the summer season.
Sure.
And that way you don't have to grow all year. You could actually grow in the summer and produce during the year, which is the ideal way to work. But you're right. What we're seeing is, 20-week grows, or 15 to 20-week grows with, producing as much as one plant possibly can, using, fertilizer and nutrients and everything. And, and ultimately that's not medicine. So I think as we think about, what is cannabis for wellness, it's not just, don't get me wrong, I love a good gummy, but that's not medicine unless it's produced with whole plant, full spectrum cannabis medicine in it. So it starts with the plant and then it goes to the processing. And that's the whole reason why those who are in the community don't want it to go the watered down way of corporate and industry, because we know that we can't possibly get the quality at scale yet. So, so I think it's unfortunately in the cannabis industry, it's all about time and patience. And knowing that the good guys are out there, the ones who are using living soil, who are committed to like the plant. I mean, this grow, I will show you pictures of it. It is, when it was, obviously in full bloom, there wasn't a brown spot on a leaf. You know what I'm saying? It's perfection. And that's the kind of cannabis I want to be smoking every day. That's what I want to be putting in my body every day. It was grown by the sun that I sit out in every single day. You know,
And have you guys run across Delta 8 and all that kind of stuff?
I'm super anti Delta 8. I feel like, and I was super anti like CBD when it first kind of proliferated for the
Mm.
same reason. I don't think there's anything wrong with Delta 8. I don't really think there's anything, I don't think there's anything wrong. Obviously, I think CBD is amazing, but the marketing of Delta 8 and the marketing of CBD, you know, in the 2019, 2020 area have just been so irresponsible. And, you know, we're not educating consumers about what is Delta 8, what's the difference, how is it made, how are you making yours? Because yes, Delta 8 is naturally available in the cannabis plant, but the way it's being derived is actually by taking CBD and converting it into to Delta 8. And that's a cooking project, that's a chemistry project. So I feel like, if, for me, cannabis for wellness is about staying as close to the plant as possible. The further and further you get away from the plant, the more we're talking about just, yeah, it's still THC and it's still good. And I'm not denigrating it. I'm just saying it's not medicine.
Yeah, I
It's,
mean, I'll go so far as to denigrate it, because what we do know is we don't know anything about it, right? So we don't know how it is, manufactured. It varies depending on, because we don't have standards. There's no labeling that we can understand or that we can read to understand what this product is. Delta 8 was primarily produced to, take advantage of a loophole in the way that the laws were written, and therefore now it's showing up at 7-Eleven and other convenience stores, right? So that anyone has access to it, doesn't know what it is, and it's touted for getting you high, right? So that's not a medicinal product. That's not, a wellness product. That is somebody taking advantage of a loophole so that they can, make a quick buck.
well,
So, and the problem that we have with that is, for those of us like yourselves who are generally, dedicated to the plant and dedicated to moving this forward, this taints the industry.
I agree. And I think that CBD marketing also tainted the industry. Everybody thought that, into the farm bill and all that was going to help us. I always knew, and that's why I always, like, I could have shifted into CBD at that moment, and it would have been a lot safer and probably more lucrative for me. But it just felt inauthentic because I knew that the real medicine is in THC, and the entourage effect and all of the cannabinoids, and that separating out one cannabinoid and here, making that the hero while vilifying the other one, just, it looked like all the terrible wellness marketing that I've seen over the course of, the past 20 years. This diet works, this thing works, do this, do that, lose 20 pounds in 15 minutes, so it all has that same smell.
Yeah, I think CBD is a good product. But I would agree with you that, they made outrageous claims. It's good. It was a cure-all for all things without any substantiated, when we make claims in medicine, it's evidence-based, right? There's been trials, and none of these claims that were being made around CBD had any documentation or data to support them. So, I think the product itself has value. However, I agree with you, the way that it was marketed, the way that, we didn't even know what half the stuff was, because somebody would stick a CBD label on it and sell it regardless of what it contained.
I mean, all we need to say is there's a CBD bed. Okay. What the fuck is that? Sorry, excuse my language. But like, come on, you know, that's how bad it got. I think it's reeling way back in now because everybody already spent their money and now people are, realize they're on to the next. Now it's crypto,
Yeah. Good. Go there. See ya.
Exactly.
We won't miss you.
Right.
So I have a couple questions for you. How is being a woman in this industry?
Well, we only have a couple more minutes and I do have to go and this is a entire conversation, but I came into cannabis. I mean, I've always been a woman in corporate America. So I always, I don't know, I lived in the patriarchy and I was raised in it and I knew how to play the game in the patriarchy. So I never really saw myself as, I know this sounds weird, but like as a woman in business before. I just kind of felt like I knew how to play the game and I played it. I have a lot of masculine qualities that helped me a lot in business. And I developed those a lot over the course of the past couple of years, 20 years. And then I realized that it's really the feminine qualities about myself that help me with business more. It's my empathy, it's my creativity. And, I was, in trying to play the game, I was trying to be more masculine. And over the course of the past few years, I've really been able to lean into more of the feminine, even though it's uncomfortable for me. And so I never really wanted to admit that, not to say that I mean, obviously I'm a feminist, but I didn't want to admit that that was a problem. I wanted to say it was an equal playing field. Let's not, we just have to work harder.
Yeah.
But now that I'm in the cannabis industry and I see women, I just see how my relationships with men are and my relationships with women are. It is extremely challenging to be a woman in business with women, and it is extremely challenging to be a woman in business with men. Okay, so I think in general, there's a lot of work to do in cannabis and the mainstream for men and women to work better together. In cannabis, it's just a microcosm of all the jerks in other places, and you got to find the good people. It is frustrating to me. I think men can get money meetings in a second and women have to like prove a million things before, and men are getting handed, $6 million and women are getting handed like $1. And I think it's just the networks in which they swim. All the money in New York, all Wall Street, it's dudes, and dudes aren't great at communicating with women. So
women, people of color, minorities. Yeah.
I mean, I'm obviously just generalizing. Yeah. And when I say dudes, I really mean white men.
Sure.
And yeah.
Yeah. So,
and like, thank you for having like a normal reaction to when I said white man as a white man. Cause like, I know that means you're like, you get it. Cause you're a good person. Cause there's like assholes. I call them, my policy at High Curious is no dicks. Okay. You can have one, but you can't be.
On that note, we hope that we won't be seeing more bros in the industry. We don't need any more. We have plenty. Thank you. We very much appreciate your time. We will put some of the links for the book and as well as the app in down below. We appreciate you. We want you back. We hope to see you again. Let's have a much longer conversation about women in cannabis, but we will do that soon. Again, thank you for your time, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much.